Track 12. Now turn to Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture about animals. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about avoiding predation. What does that mean, I hear you say? Well, you probably know the word predator. I'm sure you've all seen Predator the movie. Well, a predator is any animal that hunts and kills another animal. That animal, and I was going to say that smaller animal, but it's not always the case, is the prey. An owl, for example, is a predator, and a mouse is its prey. A lion is a predator, and a much bigger animal, a buffalo, for example, is its prey. So when I say avoiding predation, what I mean is not being caught and eaten. For many small animals, not being caught and eaten is pretty much a full-time job. Many animals that are predators themselves may be the prey of another, usually bigger animal. This is what we popularly call the food chain. So, how do animals avoid predation? Well, they have what we call defense mechanisms. These are ways in which the species has adapted over time to give it an advantage over its predators. Any adaptation of this kind increases the species' chances of survival. Over time, species that have not adapted, that is, developed some sort of defense mechanism, have met with extinction. There are various forms of defense. The first is probably very obvious, and that's speed. Predators can't feed on what they can't catch. Running away is a very effective defense mechanism, as some of you can probably remember from primary school. Flight is even more effective. Species which have developed the ability to fly over time have an enormous advantage. Far more birds would be a meal out in the wild if they couldn't fly. The second mechanism is protective coloration. You might hear the word camouflage used too, but I personally find that too simple a term when it comes to the animal kingdom. Protective coloration includes a number of slightly varied mechanisms within the overall term. Some animals blend in with their background. A chameleon is a good example. It sits on a tree and it looks like the branch of that tree. Butterflies have what we think of as beautiful patterns, not to be beautiful, but to confuse and warn off potential assailants. They blend in with the flowers around them, but may also look like something else. Some butterflies have patterns that look like huge eyes, and a would-be predator is scared off. There are all sorts of stories about how the zebra got its stripes, and not many people really know what the stripes are there for. Well, that type of coloration is called dazzle camouflage. A zebra stands out when alone and stationary, but when zebras move rapidly in a herd, their stripes create motion dazzle, a confusing, flickering mass to the eye of a lion or cheetah that might be giving chase. Selecting a target becomes far more difficult. Now, of course, animals are caught. They're frequently caught. But that might not mean the game's up. Some animals make themselves difficult or horrible to eat. Hedgehogs have sharp spines that deter a predator from tucking in even when it's captured its prey. The predator is very likely to give up when a spine gouges an eye or gets lodged in its throat. Numerous species of creature, turtles or snails for example, have developed a tough outer shell that makes it almost impossible to devour. One of my favorite creatures is the skunk, which emits a repulsive smell on being cornered, enough to send any attacker herring back into the undergrowth. In a similar way, some sea-dwelling mollusks can emit an ink cloud that fills the surrounding water, concealing it from a predatory fish that may be circling. There are frogs that go one step further. They're so poisonous that even if a predator does try and eat them, it'll probably keel over and drop dead first. Now, you'll probably be surprised, but I'm going to go on to talk about plants. Yes, many plants have defense mechanisms in exactly the same way as animals. You've probably all been stung by a nettle at some time.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. That is the end of test 3.